everybody and welcome back to the channel. It's Smashy here and today we are back in Raid Shadow Legends. I have been away for a few days. I haven't been feeling very well, but I'm feeling much better today. And I can see from logging in that I have missed quite a bit. So going into it, the first and most exciting for me is the Shadowkin Faction are here. So as you may have seen in my previous video, I did spend quite a long time drooling over all of the new models, and we can see that there are quite a few champions that have been implemented into the game, and that has headed off with Yoshi the Drunkard. So he is the new fragment event that is currently ongoing, and you can see here the different ways in which to obtain those fragments. So this little list, check it out in your news feed. This tells you how best to manage your silver, your energy and all of your other assets, so do check this out. And this is going to be running until the 29th of March, so at this point you've got another 10 days remaining. So moving on, and hello, and into the Nyrison Union Shadowkin. So as you can see, they have given us a selection of different units. So, and what's nice is they've also given us a selection that has all these different affinities. So you can see here 3 different affinities, 4 different affinities on the epics, 3 rares and then 2 uncommons there for you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a quick look at the legendaries and the epics. From what I can see, there's no bad eggs on those. I think some of the rares and the uncommons, you know, they're nice to look at, but the legendaries and the epics are the most entertaining. So Jintoro is our first legendary, and he looks fantastic. He is a magic attack based legendary, and the aesthetics with the blue lightning and blue fire on top of his helm and the antlers, very samurai feeling throughout his kit, so it does look as though he'd be a lovely addition for those collectors out there. On his A1 we've got Soul Drinker that attacks one enemy, grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy, and when booked the damage is increased up to 20%. On the A2 we've got Blood Freeze, attacks an enemy and steals 100% of the target's turn meter. Sounds quite good for arena. Decreases the cooldown of Oni's Rage by 1 turn if the target is immune to turn meter reduction effects. That could be quite interesting on bosses. Damage is increased up to 25% and the cooldown is on a 3-turner when booked. Oni's Rage is his A3, which is naturally on a 4-turn cooldown, but when booked goes down to 3. Attacks one enemy, places a 60% decreased defense debuff and a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns. That could be interesting on the clan boss. Will attack 5 times instead of 1 on every 4th use of this skill against the same target in 1 round. Yet again, I would love to see how this guy plays out for the clan boss. The damage is increased up to 25% when booked, and as I say, that cooldown is reduced. These debuffs last for 2 turns, so you will have a period of 1 turn when these debuffs are not on the target. His passive is called Vigorous. All turn meter fill effects are increased by 50% when used on this champion. Great. And his aura increases ally attack in all battles by 29%. So I generally don't use a lot of ally attack auras, in honesty. I think that defense, for example, is so much better. But the beauty about it being an all battles aura is that you can use this in Doom Tower. There's not a lot of Doom Tower auras out there at the moment. So if you are struggling to find an aura, this will be an option for you. In terms of reviews, they're okay. Most are over 4. He does seem to be quite well rounded in terms of his impact on the game. I don't have him yet, obviously, so I can only have a look at what other people are saying thus far. Moving on is our fragment summon, Yoshi the Drunkard. He is a jolly brewmaster type champion with his staff. And what I love about him is, even though this is an Oriental themed champion, the team have managed to hide a wee clover here on his shield and added all these green details on the katana wraps and his belt and the mask, etc., just to bring that tiny little bit of island onto an Oriental champion. So I do really like that. And all of his skills are actually kind of brewmaster, alcohol, drinking related. So I think he's well adapted for a St. Patrick's Day champion. The A1 is called Strong Booze, so he is a force support, by the way. Attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a stun for 1 turn. Damage is increased by 10% on booking, and that 30% becomes 40% when booked. So that could be quite nice. Flaming Spirits attacks 2 times at random, has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decrease accuracy debuff and a HP burn debuff for 2 turns. So that damage is increased by 20% on booking, and the debuff chance increases to 100% on booking, and the cooldown is normally 3 turns, but it becomes 2, which is great because the debuffs last for 2 turns, so this should be relatively up all of the time. From looking at the A1 and the A2 here, it seems like he lends quite well to the arena. HP burn, obviously that's good for Doom Tower, particularly on the Frost Spider. The fact it attacks 2 times at random means that could be 2 times on the same target or 2 times on, 1 on each enemy. But I think that he is quite a damage focused character. We need to get accuracy on him, of course, in order to make the most of these debuffs that he's applying. So there's 3 so far, and on the A3 there is a 4th at True Fear, so accuracy seems to be the key. Battle Toast places a 50% increase attack buff and a 50% increase accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also has a 50% chance of placing True Fear on all enemies for 1 turn. Has a 75% chance instead on enemies under increase attack buffs. So he does a lot of debuffs, a lot of buffs. It seems like he would be quite interesting to run with a Seer, particularly on Doom Tower Trash, on Faction Wars, that type of thing. I think that this would feed her Karma Burn quite well. Also, in terms of other areas of the game, increased accuracy, that Frost Spider reduces accuracy. Same as the Frost Giant, might be good there. If you book this ability, the debuff chance goes up to 25%, so that would be a total of 75% True Fear, 100% for those under increase attack. And the cooldown goes down to a 3-turn cooldown. So yet again, there is that 1-turn gap in which these buffs will not be on your champions. And his passive is Partier. Fills this champion's turn meter by 4% each time an enemy receives a buff. Okay, that could be interesting in Arena, and yet again on the Trash for Doom Tower, because when you are progressing up the Doom Tower, you'll see the amount of shields, unkillables, all different types of buffs, So that, I think, will do wonders for his turn meter. Aura increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. So because this is an all battles aura, it's not a very high amount of speed. If you compare that to champions such as Gorgrab for arena, perhaps, he is, you know, not on the same level. However, if you don't have a speed aura, that could be quite nice. But what I fear is if you are running kind of a speed-based arena team, I don't think that this 19% is going to be good enough, especially when there's others with much higher. I really like this guy. I think I would like to try him in quite a few areas of the game. There's been 16 reviews so far, and people are a bit unimpressed. I want to try him anyway, so I'm really looking forward to it. Next is Genzin. So he is another kind of samurai feeling attack-based champion. I do love his cloak, jacket, whatever, and the dragon detailing that's on the chest piece. So on his A1, he has flowing cuts. Attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit fills this champion's turn meter by 6%, and the damage increases up to 20% when booked. There seems to be a theme with all of these champions that there's a lot of turn meter manipulation going on. Might be kind of where the game is going in terms of their, you know, mechanics and things like that. Steel parting on the A2 in attacks or enemies has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Each critical hit fills this champion's turn meter yet again by 10%. So that damage is increased by 15% upon booking, and the debuff chance goes up to 100% when booked, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Okay, so there is yet again that 1-turn gap in which the debuff will not be on the boss, or in fact it could be useful on all enemies. So Doom Tower, eventually when we get the Shadowkin Faction in Faction Wars, it could be useful there as well. But yet again, it's turn meter manipulation. You would need to stack crit on this champion just to make sure that you're making the most of the champ. On the A3 we have Fated Vengeance. This is quite a long one. Attacks one enemy, will ignore unkillable buffs, goodbye Skull Crown, and shield buffs. Could be good in arena, particularly on a slower team, maybe. After an enemy has put up all their shields, or if there is a shielding team on the other side with that shielding set. Fills this champion's turn meter by 30%. Fills this champion's turn meter by 60% instead if the target has 50% HP or less after this attack. Also decreases the cooldown of the Steel Parting and Fated Vengeance skills by 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy. So it might be worth not having him as one of the fastest champions in your team. Letting other members bash down enemies to 50%-ish, well, just above 50%. His speed is quite reasonable at 100. The damage is increased by 25% on booking, and the cooldown is down to 3 turns when booking. I think it's quite difficult to judge these champions without having seen them, because there's so much manipulation, and I know I keep using that word, but there's so much that you need to see, I feel, before you can cast judgment, really. So Steel Parting is that A2. So what it's saying is, you know, Steel Parting has a cooldown 4 turns naturally, reduced by 1 turn down to 3 if you book it, and then has a further chance of reducing the cooldown even further. So you might find that this decreased defense, you can keep it up all the time as long as Fated Vengeance is being utilized by this section of the ability. Passive here, Bushido increases this champion's speed by 10 and resistance by 50 if there are fewer champions on this champion's team than the number of enemies on the enemy team, and always works when fighting bosses. So there's a couple of places I think this could be useful. For a start, the main boss that has more ads than champions is Spider. So you got to think about all those little spiderlings. So naturally he would fit into a team like that. But also if you are, you have quite some meaty characters and you're able to farm arena and faction wars, campaign, etc. without using your champion cap, that 4 or 5 champions for arena or the other encounters, then you're gonna have less than the enemy team. So he might be quite good for farming different aspects of the game. Doom Tower as well, if I didn't mention that. Yeah, again, I think I need to try it. Other people have tried him. Yeah, again, he's sitting around that 4 mark, the same as Jintoro. We'll have to see. So they're the 3 legendaries. Moving on to the epics, we've got Taragi the Frog, who's a HP based champion. I really want this guy, and other people seem to agree. I have a very poison focused team, and I think that he would fit in quite nicely. So on the A1 he's got Swamp Club. Attacks an enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack for 2 turns. Damage is increased by 10% upon booking, and the debuff chance is increased up to 40% when booked. So decreased attack is very good on clan boss. I can also see this being useful in arena. Potent Stench attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing Provoke for 1 turn. The chance increases by 5% for each debuff on the enemy team. So yes, again, if I have a very poison focused team, and if I have a toxic set to make it even worse, that's going to apply even more debuffs. And naturally in my teams for arena and things like that, you've got decreased defense as well. It's just going to increase the chance that Provoke is turned on to him. He's going to need a lot of HP. If he's going to be soaking a lot of the damage incoming, then he's definitely going to need it. The damage is increased by 20% upon booking and is on a 3-turn cooldown. So, you know, I think that would be a great asset to an arena team. Moving on to his A3, it's called Bog Blessing. Places a shield buff equal to 15% of this champion's max HP. So the higher the HP, the higher the shield. And a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. That sounds kind of like the shield ally protection that my Blind Seer has, but hers is not based off max HP. also heals this champion by 25% of their max HP and places a 30% reflect damage buff on them for 3 turns. The heal increases by 2.5% for each poison debuff on the enemy team. Poison team. Poison team. The heal is increased by 15% on booking. The shield is increased by 10% and the cooldown is reduced down to 3 turns. And yet again, that means that this buff is on for 2 turns. There's that 1 turn gap, and then he'll be able to use the ability again. And what's interesting, if this is on a 3 turn cooldown, then this section of the ability, the reflect damage, that lasts for 3 turns. So how exciting does that sound? Can't wait to try him. On his passive, we've got Toxic Blood. When attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff, more poisons, on the attacker for 2 turns, occurs once per hit. So what I like about this is this chap can just literally stand there, and if, for example, you have a multi-hitter that's attacking him, those champions that attack 2, 3, 4 times, he's just going to keep applying a poison to them. So he doesn't have to do anything, they just need to touch him, which is great. And this is the decent poison. There is the low end poison at 2.5%, so it is quite nice that it is the decent one. Especially obviously as there are debuff caps, it's nice that they're giving us the good one. And then on his aura, he's got ally resisting all battles by 40. Speed is under 100, so it's a little bit on the slow side, but as I have said, he tends to be the one who stands there and gets attacked, in my opinion. Obviously, he does need to apply his decrease attack and his provoke, but it's, it doesn't seem to be as necessary as it is with some other champions. But all in all, he's a very samurai looking, not samurai, what's the word? What is the word? The poison that comes from his tongue, you can see why they call him the frog. I think yet again the team have done an excellent job in, and look at the little wooden blocks he's got for shoes, even down to the very small details. The guys at Plarium, I think, have done a really good job. Moving on to Sachi, so she is force-based support. On her A1, she has this sickle sweep that attacks all enemies, has a 40% chance of placing 50% decreased accuracy for 2 turns, damage increased by 10% on booking, and the 40% becomes a 50% when booked. Could be quite interesting for arena. I'm not sure, but it is nice that her A1 does attack all enemies. Heart Pierce attacks 1 enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased crit rate debuff and a leech for 2 turns. It's not often that you see decreased crit rate, and leech obviously helps with the healing. The damage is increased by 20% on booking, and this 75% becomes 100% when booked, and it's on a 2-turn cooldown, and the debuffs last for 2 turns, so pretty much you can keep these up all the time. A3 Shadow Ambush places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, then attacks 1 enemy, fills the turn meters of all allies by 20% if this attack is critical. So we want to stack that crit again, and it's another turn meter based ability. So she would be quite good in supporting her fellow legendaries in the Shadowkin. Maybe. The damage is increased by 15% on booking, and this is on a 3-turn cooldown when fully booked. So there is that 1-turn gap where the increased attack is not on your heroes. Moving on, we've got the passive, which is called False Death. I think this sounds quite interesting. So it revives a random ally with 30% HP whenever this champion kills an enemy. Has a 50% chance of placing a fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn whenever an ally is revived. So what's interesting about this, if you look at other resurrecting champions such as Syl, she puts that damage mitigation onto who she reses, and it's the same with Blind Seer. She also would put a buff onto the ally rather than the enemy. So I think that this is a very clever way of protecting that revived ally. What I do like about this ability is because it is on a passive, she can keep doing this res over and over again. So I really like that it's a new type of res that's in the game. She is quite a fast character as well. So it's quite nice for a support character already. I do like the model and the new type of weapon. I haven't seen a weapon like this in the game yet. And the animation of her twirling this blade on a rope. They kind of look like little mini scythes. I think I called them hand blades in my previous video. I'm not really sure what to call them. But the details like the hairpins and the masks, reviews thus far are not great to be honest, but I'm keeping my mind open. Chonoru. So Chonoru was kind of the character that I liked the most out of the previous video I did, aesthetically of course. So what I like about her is how she's a bit chalk and cheese, how different she is compared to the other champions. They all look like colourful battle ready warriors, whereas Chonoru is a bit more of an elegant character. I mean, obviously she is in these battle leathers, but she's a lot more elegantly dressed, like a lady or royalty. Her hair is lovely and preened. I just think that she is so different to all of the others that the character intrigues me quite a lot. And she's got these lovely dragon tattoos that are on her arms. So I think that's what enticed me with her, is just how different she is in the black and white. A1, so she is an attack based champion, is called Night Blossom. Attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing block buffs for 2 turns, and that damage is increased by 10% when booked, and the 40% becomes 50%. Okay, could be interesting for arena. Attacks 3 times at random. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. So with this 3 times at random, those 3 times could be all on one opponent, or that could be split. That ability is a bit of RNG. You're not really sure where those attacks are going to go. The damage is increased by 15% on booking. The hits debuff chance increases to 100% when booked, and the cooldown is on 3 turns when booked. So yet again, I know I keep saying it, but there is that 1 turn gap of when this ability will not have the debuff on the target. And her A3 is called Lay Bare. Removes all increased defense buffs from all enemies, then attacks all enemies. Decreases the cooldown of Lay Bare by 1 turn for each enemy killed by this skill. So the damage is increased up to 20% and the cooldown is on a 3 turn. So maybe she would be interesting in, say, arena teams and things like that, if you know that you're facing opponents that use increased defense buffs in order to wipe those out. But there's other debuffers, you see, like Madame Ceres. Why would you use her to just strip one debuff when you can have a champion that strips all of them? And Gorgorab and things like that. They don't pick and choose the buff that they're taking away like she does. I'm not entirely sure where she'd fit into the game, unfortunately. The reviews so far have been quite average. I don't know why somebody has managed to rate her for Faction Wars when there isn't even a Shadowkin Faction War at the minute. It's a shame because, as I say, she does look great to me. And last but not least, we are moving on to Aboro. And Aboro, I think, next to Mr. Toragi, is one of the champions I want the most. So it's actually the epics I'm more interested in than the legendaries. I love a hat with the masks on. I think she's got this kind of pirate rogue feel to her with the dual blades. Yet again, very in keeping with the Oriental theme. On the A1, she's an attack, and this is going to be difficult to get her, perhaps, for me. Void is always one of those that I don't get a lot of void shards, and usually I end up with blues, so I'll just have to keep my fingers crossed. Attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of placing 60% decreased debuff for 2 turns. Will attack all enemies instead if the target is under 4 or more debuffs. My poison team again. 10% increased damage on booking, and this 40% will become 50% on booking. Mystic Smoke on the A2 attacks one enemy 2 times. The second hit has a 75% chance of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. The first hit has a 75% chance of stealing all buffs from the target when attacking under a Veil or a Perfect Veil buff. The Veil buff is on the A3 and I'll come to that in a minute. Damage is increased by 10% on booking, and the 75% become 100% on booking, and the cooldown is reduced to 3 turns. A3 is called Ninja Arts. Places a 30% increased crit rate buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks one enemy. Places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns if this attack is critical. So the damage there increases by 25% on booking, and the cooldown goes down to 3 turns. So there is that 1 turn gap again. She would prepare, I know she does her own perfect veil, but characters such as Rector Draft, you know, providing that veil would benefit her as well. So the way I feel with her is she's a bit of a kamikaze. Or a Leroy Jenkins, if you follow kind of Warcraft. She pops everything and goes in and hopes for the best. And if she dies, then she will get back up again. So Vanish is this passive that helps her get back up again. Places a Revive on Death buff on this champion for 3 turns whenever they receive a Veil or a Perfect Veil buff. So yet again, if you pair her with another champion that's providing Veil, not only does she have her own Perfect Veil, but she's just going to have Revive on Death all the time. She's going to be incredible, I think. Aura increases ally attack in dungeons by 33%. This is in dungeons, so because it's specific to an area of the game, this ally attack is quite high. Good if you're struggling to find an attack, a aura for dungeons, but there are quite a lot of decent auras out there. If you don't need the defense, then perhaps you could look into this. Thus far, people have found her to be quite good. She's kind of sitting at an average, I'd say, of about 4.8. There are a couple of lower ones, maybe even 4.9. She seems to be quite well rounded in all areas of the game, and like I say, I would love to have her as well as my dear friend Toragi. So that's it, everybody. Like I said, I'm not going to go into these rares. Bit of a Catwoman theme on Life Taker though. But here, have a quick look at them. Yet again, they are all fulfilling that ideal vision of Asian military. I think it's a shame this chap isn't an epic or a legendary. I think the aesthetics are great. Even all the way down to the uncommons, these two uncommon champions, they still perfectly fit what they're trying to achieve, but they aren't very colourful. You can tell they're kind of like the initiates into the military forces of the East. They're doing what they're meant to do. Like, this guy just looks like a trainee, with what he's wearing, as you know, as well as the fact he's only been equipped with a little dagger and some throwing knives and a simple bow and arrow for conscript. But I hope this was interesting for you. As you can see, I have none of these champions yet, so I'm very much looking forward to giving them a go. And I know you've been with me for almost 40 minutes, so thank you so much for staying to the end. If you could be so kind to drop me a like on the video as well as subscribe, and you will be notified of when I am back with some more videos for you. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.